We're in the association offices of the YMCA's of Greater Houston, standing beside a most unusual wall that is the creation of this gentleman, Gary Nichols. And I've been told that Gary knows everything there is to know about the history of the local YMCA's. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. Gary, tell us about the wall here. Obviously, the wall is the history of the local Y.
This wall came about as an effort to visualize 125 years of the YMCA Greater Houston, that it has a history. Houston as a city is one that always is moving forward and never looking back. And so our wish was to show that there is a history and that there are people in that history that have mattered in the development and the service of the YMCA.
Was it difficult to find some of these really old, treasured photos?
Yes, because the YMCA is not good about keeping things, and we scrounged in closets and old boxes.
I understand the first photo up in the corner is the original building. It looks like a house.
It was. It was a cottage that a Y volunteer purchased in what now is the heart of downtown Houston.
And this would have been what year?
This would have been 1902. The YMCA had two homes before that, both rented upper stories of downtown buildings. But this was its first owned site with a wooden gymnasium that the Y people built out back. And it was a very, needless to say, a very primitive kind of a start.
And then you have another photo. You think it's the oldest existing photo of any outdoor Y activity? Yes.
Our original, the oldest photo we can find of, and Y camping started in the YMCA's the USA in about 1885. And I'm pretty sure that the Houston Y started soon after. But this camp down on the Gulf of Mexico was the first one that we have a photo of, and it will be on public land, not owned, in 1915.
Now here on the wall in a very prominent place is a blow-up of a membership card, which is pretty precious.
Yes, this is 1886. This person, M.A. Westcott, is hereby entitled to the privileges of the gymnasium, reading, and lecture rooms for 1886. And you can almost see $5 for an annual membership in the YMCA.
Now, that was a little chunk of change back then.
Well, yeah.
It was affordable, but $5 was...
It was a time of promise. And they made a bold beginning in the borrowed rooms, and it took 20 years to finally have a YMCA of their own.
Gary, let's go down the wall just a little bit here. You finally get to a point where the Y can afford to buy its own high-class building, and this is it here.
This is it. This is the building that is built on the site of that original cottage, built for $180,000 in its day, and was a grand building. Had 5 floors, had one of the early YMCA swimming pools, which they called a plunge bath at that time, and had a dormitory, and gymnasium and bowling alley and many classrooms for educating young men coming to Houston.
Gary, as we move on here, here's a beautiful multi-story building which I understand was the really first permanent, if you can call it that, substantial home the Y had here.
That's right. This building was finished in 1908, constructed at the corner of Fannin and McKinney, which today is the very heart of downtown Houston. It was a 5-story structure that had everything they needed at the time. There was the dormitory there. There was a plunge bath, a swimming pool. Early on in that era of thing, it had bowling alleys, and it had many, many classrooms because the Y was committed to teaching young men who came to the city.
Now, this building would have been used from what year to when?
From 1908 to 1941, when the next building was completed. 33 years in all.
Now, before we talk about another building that a lot of people may be familiar with, we need to bring up the hotel aspects of the Y. I understand at one time nationally, the YMCA maintained the largest number of hotel rooms of any entity.
Hmm. It did. And because the YMCA's originally were a young adult men ministry, and thousands of rooms, certainly the largest hotel chain in the country, and Houston was no exception. This building had 91 rooms for dormitory rooms for men. The building that followed it had 270 rooms, eventually co-ed, and still today the YMCA in Houston has a 100-room hotel in one of its the neighborhood Y centers. So we're committed for the whole time.
I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say that many of the leaders who came to Houston here really got their start and had a decent place to stay to build their lives because of the Y.
We've identified a number of those leading bankers and community leaders, and they've come forward. And they came to Houston to seek their fortune, and the Y was a quality place to stay that kept them out of trouble, if you will. And they then led and served Houston with a great difference, I think, in our city.
As Houston and the Y concept grew, you outgrew that building. Let's move on to the building that a lot of people remember, and that's that gorgeous downtown building that replaced that one.
Yeah, interestingly, that building was built at the same year that the United States endured Pearl Harbor. No. They might say in retrospect that had they known, they might not have moved so quickly. But the downtown YMCA on Louisiana, 1600, this building was completed in 1941 and in active service until 2010. It lasted 70 years.
And that was replaced by that gorgeous facility downtown you have now.
Yes, yes.
Now, one of the things we need to talk about is the educational aspect of the Y. There's so many photos here, of course, of camping and swimming and that kind of thing, but instructional and library and study done within the walls of the Y.
One of the great contributions of the YMCA, we think, is in formal education. This was the law library at the YMCA South Texas College of Law, which was formed in 1923, chartered in 1928, and continues this day as an independent institution. The South Texas College of Law in downtown Houston was with the YMCA for its first 44 years as a YMCA program.
Now, we walk past something. Let's back up just a wee bit, and there's a photo here of the chapel. It is always, in the early days, officially called the Young Men's Christian Association. What eventually happened to the contents of that chapel?
This chapel was one of two chapels in the downtown YMCA built in 1941. The second chapel, which was at the main entrance of that building, it's a replica of that chapel is in this office, and would love to share it too.
Let's go see it. Okay. So, Gary, what you've done is you've preserved here in the headquarters building a couple of windows and the altarpiece here. This window, of course, would have been an outside window, and now you've backlit it because it's on an interior wall. But this is a wonderful little room.
This room is very actively used, too. Our staff meet here for Bible study every week, and it's open for meditation by anyone. And this is one of a number of chapels that are in our neighborhood YMCAs, and as well as the new downtown YMCA. And we feel very strongly that a person's YMCA is built on the Judeo-Christian principles, and we stand by it.
One thing I want to say before closing, and just let you comment on it, I've recently become aware of the fact that a lot of people don't have a church home. There have been cases that the Y has been responsible for someone's burial because the Y was that person's only family.
We've heard of that too. And our Y has a chaplain, a full-time chaplain, and he has performed the various rituals as in a church, and he's a ordained minister. and is very active to whoever in the Y needs him, or members for that point.
Gary, I remember years ago we always called the Y the place of fun, fitness, and fellowship. And certainly this aspect of the wall here is pretty darn amazing because it shows the incredible scope. It's not just camping and swimming.
You bet. And the Y has been innovative its whole history and catching the next wave, as we call it. And it's done so very, very effectively, I think. The Y started in family programming, for instance, early on, and as primarily because of the development of a father and son Y Indian Guide program, where dads and their sons or daughters, one-on-one, did things together in small groups. And this launched family programming, and all YMCAs today are family YMCAs as a result, we think.
And the other thing, too, and we could do an entire program on this, the ethnic diversity of Houston. The Y here has reached out in, I think you speak 120 different languages or something.
We're a very international city, and this led us to a very special service of the Y. Our international services refugee resettlement program, which the Y started during the time of the Vietnamese boat people back in the late 1970s, working with the U.S. State Department to resettle refugees from Southeast Asia. And we've been very successful at that. Continue today and have resettled over 20,000 refugees in the last 30 years, and have continued to working significantly now with in support of trafficked women and other initiatives that are international. And we encourage those families and kids to become YMCA folks.
And I think the bottom line here is you look at some of these young kids, the faces tell the story.
Don't they? They're dramatic. One of my favorites is these two girls who are in a YMCA child care program. The Y entered child care early when both parents went to work. And we now are serving approximately 10,000 kids every day in after-school care and school-based child care and in child care in Ys. And these two characterize the crowd.
And in yet another building is another wall. And Gary, there are pictures here of all of your Houston facilities. I understand you have 36 separate Y buildings.
Yes, YMCA centers are all over Southeast Texas, and they're all part of our YMCA of Greater Houston. And they're the heart of the YMCA now, because that's where the kids are and the families are, and the breadth of the creativity that's the YMCA.
What's the farthest out?
We go as far as Huntsville, Texas, which is 70 miles north, and we go to the Gulf of Mexico, 50 miles south, and west toward Austin.
I think the really heartwarming thing, and I just want to ask about this one element, and that is there have been many instances where a neighborhood has come to you and said, we want you here.
Yeah, this happens particularly in outlying cities that are gradually becoming part of the greater Houston environment. They want a Y, and they raise funds, and we come, and it's been quite successful. About 8 or 10 of our YMCA's are in towns not in Houston but nearby.
And one of the more interesting things is no two look alike.
No, they all carry the character both of their time and of the need for them. And the downtown Y has a whole different image, working primarily with adults, than one that is mainly kids, and another may be mainly child care or resettlement, as in the case of our international Y. So they take the character of the constituency they serve.
Well, the Y has some great treasures, and one of them is you, keeping all these memories alive.
Well, I believe I have the holy grail of the Y. I've been in the Houston Y for 52 years, and it's been very generous to keep me around.